The purpose of this screencast is to read the story The Two Brothers by Leo Tolstoy and to use the 6 signposts that we just learned in class. So, to review the 6 signposts and the symbol I'm going to use while I read, let's take a look at this chart. So, contrasts and contradictions. And I have what kind of these, a Venn diagram where you compare and contrast is the symbol I'm going to use. And I'm going to stop and ask the question, why is the character doing that when I come across a contrast or contradiction? Number 2, words of the wiser. I used what looks just like the outline of a wizard hat. So like an old wizard that gives you words of the wiser. And I'm going to stop and ask, what's the life lesson and how might it affect the character when a character is getting words from a wiser person? And I have an aha moment, and I'm using the symbol wow. And when I come across an aha moment, I'm going to stop and ask myself, how might this change things? Number 4, again and again. Of course, this is when something's repeated over and over again. Somewhat like the recycling symbol is what I'm going to use. And when I come across that, I'm going to ask myself, why does this keep happening again and again? Number 5 is a memory moment. And for my symbol, I'm using like a thought bubble. And so somebody's having a memory. And when I come across a memory moment or when somebody's having a flashback, I might ask myself, why might this memory be important? Finally, 6 are tough questions. So when a character is wrestling with something internally, it usually is an internal conflict. And I use the question mark for that. And when I come across that tough question, I'm going to ask myself, what does this question make me wonder about? Altogether, all these different ways of reading help me uncover the theme and help me find, well, first they help me find conflict within the story, and then from there I can determine the theme. So the story we're going to be reading, and here's my symbols again, just as a reminder, it's called The Two Brothers, and it's a short story by famous author Leo Tolstoy. And looking at this, I can see the title's got a forest, so I can know that it's probably going to have a setting of a forest. And it's a pretty short story. It's really only probably 2 pages when it's all said and done. All right, let's get started. The Two Brothers, short story by Leo Tolstoy. 2 brothers set out on a journey together. At noon, they lay down in a forest to rest. When they woke up, they saw a stone lying next to them. There was something written on the stone, and they tried to make out what it was. Whoever finds this stone, they read, let him go straight into the forest at sunrise. In the forest, a river will appear. Let him swim across the river to the other side. There, he will find a she-bear and her cubs. Let him take the cubs from her and run up the mountain with them, without once looking back. On the top of the mountain, he will see a house, and in that house will he find happiness. So after reading this note that's on the stone, I see that it's about happiness and finding it. That's interesting. But I'm going to continue reading. When they had read what was written on the stone, the younger brothers said, let us go together. We can swim across the river, carry off the bear cubs, take them to the house on the mountain, and together find happiness. Right here, I have something that's been repeated. The younger brothers going over what the stone said for the second time. So it's again and again. So I'm going to ask myself, after stopping, why might the author bring this up again and again? And I'm guessing at this early stage that this kind of motif or this theme of going through these steps to find happiness is important. And it really reminds me that maybe this story is about happiness, or finding happiness, or what it takes to find happiness. Let's continue reading. I am not going into the forest after bear cubs, said the older brother. I'm going to stop there because I have a tough question. The older brother is wrestling with what the younger brother wants to do. So he's going against his younger brother, and he's got a tough question. I don't want to go after happiness the way that it's written on this particular stone. So I stop and I ask myself, what does this question make me wonder about? Well, it makes me wonder, maybe there's another way to happiness? I don't know. Or maybe it's not worth the happiness that they'll find after they get there. So I'll reread from here. I'm not going into the forest after bear cubs, said the elder brother, and I advise you not to go. In the first place, no one can know whether what is written on this stone is the truth. Perhaps it was written in jest. It is even possible that we have not read it correctly. In the second place, even if what is written here is the truth, suppose we go into the forest and night comes and we cannot find the river. We shall be lost. And if we do find the river, how are we going to swim across it? It may be broad and swift. In the third place, even if we swim across the river, do you think it is an easy thing to take her cubs away from a she-bear? She will seize us, and instead of finding happiness, we shall perish or die. And all for nothing. In the fourth place, even if we succeed in carrying off the bear cubs, we could not run up a mountain without stopping to rest. And, most important of all, the stone does not tell us what kind of happiness we should find in that house. It may be that the happiness awaiting us there is not at all the sort of happiness we want. This is important. So I've highlighted it red, and I'm stopping. And what I have here is the wizard hat, because these are words of the wiser, the older brother speaking to the younger brother. And what's the life lesson, and how might it affect the character? Well, the older brother is telling the younger brother, hey, stop for a moment. We're not going to go and follow the prophecy on the stone, because maybe at the end of it is a version of happiness we don't want. And also, all the steps we have to take, who says we're going to even be able to accomplish them? It may be that we fail and then we did it all for nothing. So perhaps the happiness that the younger brother wants to chase isn't the kind of happiness people want. In my opinion, said the younger brother, you are wrong. What is written on the stone could not have been put there without reason, and it is all perfectly clear. In the first place, no harm will come to us if we try. In the second place, if we do not go, someone else will read the inscription on the stone and find happiness, and we shall have lost it all. In the third place, if you do not make an effort and try hard, nothing in the world will succeed. In the fourth place, I should not want it thought that I was afraid of anything. So I'm stopping here. This is pretty important. And I have a contrast. Now, most of the time when you stop for a contrast and contradiction, it's within a single character's head. But in this case, you have two characters contrasting and contradicting each other. And so that's also important, the two brothers going against each other. So I stop and ask, why would the character act this way or feel this way? What might this mean to the character? Well, what this means is that the two brothers have two different ways of approaching life. One thinks that you should be cautious, the older brother. The other one thinks that you need to take the risk to find the happiness. And that's the younger brother. Also, I have a conflict brewing here, right? The two brothers are going against each other with two very different viewpoints of how to go about living life, and maybe two very viewpoints about happiness and what that means. The elder brother answered him by saying, "The proverb says, in seeking great happiness, small pleasures may be lost, and also a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush." To explain these proverbs, if you seek great happiness, you might miss out on the small pleasures along the way. You might overlook those small pleasures. So he's telling him that. And also, if you have a bird in hand, a bird in hand is worth two in the bush. That means keep the bird you have in your hand if you're hunting birds. Don't drop that bird and then try to go after the two that are in the forest or far away from you. Keep what you have. So, in other words, he's telling him, take life for its simple pleasures. Don't try to seek great happiness. The younger brother replied, "I have heard, he who is afraid of the leaves must not go into the forest. And also, beneath a stone, no water flows." So he's telling him, take risks. In other words, go into the forest and see what's out there. And don't be a sedentary stone in water. You got to be moving with the water. In other words, don't let things pass you by. Then the younger brother set off, and the elder remained behind. And again, you have a contradiction here and contrast. So why would the character act or feel this way? Well, one brother's deciding to go off and follow the prophecy on the stone. The other brother, the older brother, is not going to go. So we have a clear conflict here. Pretty important. No sooner had the younger brother gone into the forest than he found the river, swam across it, and there on the other side was the she-bear fast asleep. He took her cubs and ran up the mountain without looking back. When he reached the top of the mountain, the people came out to meet him with a carriage to take him into the city, where they made him their king. So I'm going to stop here. Wow. I have an aha moment where something great is achieved by the character, realizing that the prophecy is true. How might this moment change things? Well, realize that it was worth following the prophecy on the stone, that it's going to bring him great happiness as king. He ruled for 5 years. In the 6th year, another king who was stronger than he waged war against him. The city was conquered, and he was driven out. Again, the younger brother became a wanderer, and he arrived one day at the house of the elder brother. I have a contradiction and contrast here too, is that once that brother that was this kind of thrill seeker who will take risks and is very driven to find ultimate happiness, now after finding it, he just becomes a wanderer. It's kind of a contrast. Seems to have changed the way that he's behaving. So I'm asking myself, why would the character actor feel this way? What might this mean to the character? Does it mean maybe that searching for ultimate happiness isn't worth it? That you kind of lose your zest for life once you fail? Who knows? The elder brother was living in a village and had grown neither rich nor poor. The two brothers rejoiced at seeing each other, and at once began telling of all that had happened to them. "You see," said the elder brother, "I was right Here I lived quietly and well, while you, though you may have been a king, have seen a great deal of trouble. I do not regret having gone into the forest and up the mountain, replied the younger brother. I may have nothing now, but I shall always have something to remember, while you have no memories at all. And this is a memory moment, where the younger brother is recalling his great memories of being king. And what does this question make me wonder about? Well, what he's wondering, or why he's thinking about this memory, is he's obviously reflecting back on the fact that maybe these great memories really stick in your brain and bring you happiness for the rest of your life, even if they are only fleeting, meaning they only last for a short time. Whereas the older brother, who doesn't take the risk, doesn't have ultimate happiness, has these little moments along the way, but maybe they're not worth remembering. And that brings us to the end of the story. So then we go through kind of a process of understanding what we just read and the signposts that we uncovered. And really, I have a really good sense of what the story was all about because I used those signposts. And really, I have a good sense of what the conflict is. So first question, what is the conflict in the story? Well, the contrast and contradiction signpost helps me reveal the conflict. One brother wishes to take a risk and follow the prophecy, which is on the stone. If he succeeds, he will find ultimate but short-lived happiness. The other brother sees all the dangers. He is more cautious. He plays it safe and returns home. He believes that simple pleasures make for a happy life. So your conflict is two totally different versions of what happiness is. Simple life, simple pleasures, ultimate happiness, but short-lived. Okay, knowing the conflict, what is the topic of this story? In other words, what are they arguing about? Well, the two brothers are conflicted over how to find happiness. So the topic in this story is happiness. Once we know the topic of the story, or what the conflict is kind of over, a single word, and it's happiness in this case, then we can find the theme. Because a theme, what does the story answers this question? What does the story say about the topic of happiness? What is the two brothers, or Leo Tolstoy, the author, saying about happiness in the story? And what he's saying is, it says there are many ways to find happiness. Within this story, there's two. You have ultimate happiness, you remember it for the rest of your life, but it's only short-lived. Or you can live a quiet life, enjoy the little things, and you might not have the great memories because the happiness wasn't ultimate, but because you didn't take the risks, because you were cautious, you focused on the simple pleasures in life. So as a reader, I'm now asking myself, which one do I agree with? Seeking ultimate happiness, or just enjoying the simple pleasures along the way? This ends the reading.